and that there wouldn't be a lot of trash that would build up. So it is definitely an interesting consideration. You have a bunch of things that are flooding and then going dry, what's happening with the garbage. So,
And I'm just curious, I guess it's a general question. We have neighborhoods to the north and south of us. Obviously, there's two waterways we're talking about bounding this green benefit district. Are the solutions that you all are proposing, do you feel that they're fairly self-contained for this district, this area, or do we need to be taking into account their impact on those other neighborhoods?
I think definitely this is something that, as these are 200-year projection plans, large-scale implementations, they could be applied in the future and continue to extend consideration out to a larger scale. Right now, this is, I don't know if you can speak to this better.
Well, we started with talking to the Green Benefit District, and we realized that they had quite a bit of inland flooding issues, even during drought season. Possibly due to sewer backup or presence of springs. We still can't quite figure that out. But as we continue to think about climate resiliency, even from the GBD's perspective, we cannot ignore the shoreline treatment, because what Pier 70 has done is to take care of their own site. So they elevated, they decided to elevate their own building pad elevations so that they don't get inundated in the near future, say within the next 30 years. But that doesn't help anywhere around them. So if we don't think about short line treatment, then Dogpatch will ultimately be inundated. So as we started to then look at Dogpatch's climate resiliency from multiple perspectives in terms of coastal flooding, inland flooding, and creek flooding, we started to expand our scope because GBD has some impact fee, but that's not enough to build a regional infrastructure. The super levy obviously needs the buy-in of the city and possibly adjacent areas, right? So, and we were fortunate that Nick has been, working with us even over weekend and past midnight, crunching numbers to help us understand flood risk analysis and how to use those numbers to help us make design decisions. So from there on, we then came up with solutions that begin to really help us understand inland flooding along the two floodways, that kind of overlap the historical creek beds. So then the scope kept just expanding forever. We thought about GBD, but now we're thinking about all the possible floodways and how we can mitigate inland flooding even during drought or during, say, a 1,000-year storm, by having this Potter Park design in the sense that we could really manipulate the water level within the Potter Park. So if you have a climate forecast, weather forecast saying that it's going to rain for 5 days, say if it's going to be a 500-year storm, we can potentially lower the water level in the Potter Park, which is hydrologically insulated from the bay. Even with the rising bay water, we're able to provide sufficient capacity to handle the inland flooding. So that's just one benefit. But another benefit was really tied to your comment earlier about, what do you do with the trash and, during the drought, and then all of a sudden it's flooded, how do you deal with those spaces? So we thought about placemaking. So this is not just a big water infrastructure project. We're really thinking about placemaking from a human experience perspective. So inducing a sense of stewardship towards these little public spaces or public amenities really will be the key. People probably will want to go and pick up trash from these places because they are the ones that are saving their life, So and there's also, from a design standpoint, if these are amazing, aesthetically pleasing places where people like to hang out, they begin to develop place attachment and want to take care of them. So that's another aspect. But really the Potter Park, ultimately, if we think about its potential to handle the water quantity and quality from the combined sewer overflow, it could potentially replace a lot of the infrastructure projects that are now in the pipeline. So we can funnel all those pots of money, including possible future impact fees coming out of future developments, which we're able to hold on the backside of super levy, and potentially we open up one of the floodway into a daily creek, that could stimulate new developments and give us more financial support to make this big move. And this kind of big move really needs to take at least 30 years to be fully implemented. So we're kind of, really running out of time if we don't kind of take some actions and make some decisions, basically.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Another question based on that. Has there been any precedent studies where combined overflow has actually flowed through a park, and then once it dried up, people are allowed to use that recreationally? Because I mean, even now, you have to have so much signage for like recycled water, and that is treated.
That's an excellent question. So basically, most of the precedents that we looked at from Netherlands, they carefully separated the sources of the runoff. So, disconnecting downspout and from the roof, from the pipe, and using that water for non-potable water reuse usually is facilitated with the water square design. Because that water is safe enough for human contact. It comes down from the roof. It's not that dirty. So I have not seen a single example that actually pipes combined sewer overflow into a public space that's meant to have human use. But the Potter Park, on the other hand, is meant to be more like a tidal lagoon combined with tidal wetlands. So it's not where you're gonna walk on and play in, right? But it's more of a passive recreational park that you're looking at.
Can I add to that?
Sure.
I think today we have recreational use in the creeks, which are where the combined sewer discharges to. So depending on what type of use you have.
Right.
There's a kayak hut, which is next to our
That's
combined sewer
true.
overflow. So maybe it's not, you don't want to have a picnic in the grass where
Mm-hmm.
the combined sewer was overflowing, but maybe there's some other uses it can be.
Right.
Are you from the SFPC?
No, I work, I'm just trying to figure out my time, but I work for the Public Works.
Okay. And then isn't there excuse me,
Yes.
hi, David.
David, yes.
There's a huge overflow chamber that goes along the waterfront right now. Is that right? Can you describe that if you're familiar with it?
Well, so you could think of it, we had a presentation yesterday for the students where we gave some background, and we described it as kind of like a moat. And there's 200 million gallons of storage in a series of large concrete underground structures that surround the city. And they're not a continuous ring, but almost kind of like a moat surrounding the city.
Okay.
I
So,
think that should be taken into account a little bit because it's really an important structure. And previous studios that I've led here, that are dealing with perception waterfront issues, it's always been a really amazing thing infrastructure to address.
Yeah, what I'd say is that, getting to Hope's comment that the public potable spaces have carefully separated the water, we made huge investments in our combined sewer, and we have safe places to contain combined sewer water, but we don't really have many places for surface waters or roof water to go besides into the combined sewer, so we can relieve some of the burden on combined sewer by putting other places.
It brings up two questions. One is the increased density in the city, especially in eastern neighborhoods, how that is going to affect the increase in flows, an increase in demands. But also, one of the things that Ken Korkamp was telling me a couple weeks ago is that with the implementation wholesale throughout the city of green infrastructures that are within the public right-of-way and also within private use, that I don't know if I'd heard accounts that they're afraid that they're not going to have enough water to make the existing systems flow and to be able to get the materials to, or what's happening is things are backing up or getting drier and getting plugged more. Is that true? And I think it has relevance to this because there's lots of...
in times of drought, we're all trying to conserve water, and that's, the utility rates are, the income for the utility because of water conservation is going down, and there are also, there's less flows to flush out sewers, and those are all constraints.
We actually explore solutions to what you just mentioned this morning with Rosie James from Public Utilities Commission as well, and Nick was there. So basically what we haven't really emphasized was the fact that with rising bay water, ultimately you're gonna have sewage backup, because sewage discharges by gravity. So when you lose the hydraulic head to really discharge sewage, ultimately, you know, you're gonna get saltwater intrusion plus sewage backup into the streets and people's houses. So the whole notion of having a super levee in Potter Park is to be able to control the water level and therefore reduce the saltwater intrusion, and also be able to discharge the combined sewer flow and treat it and potentially reuse it for non-potable uses.
So one other question is just the, there was an exciting example that you had shown in Portland that showed the wastewater treatment. And you see a lot more of these very like site-specific solutions, and a lot of them are, in a sense, dictated by the agencies now, which is great. Is the studio addressing decentralized infrastructure
Yes.
that's neighborhood specific?
Yes, we talked about that this morning. So what we're gonna do is to look at some of the precedents and get a little bit of sense on, you know, what's the square footage needed for this kind of blue streets that treat raw sewage or combined sewage overflow into non-potable water to be used inside for toilet flushing. We need to figure out what that means in terms of square footage, and then how many people can be served by that kind of intervention. And then we're going to take that number back into Dogpatch and then really look at the sites that are the tightest, you know, with the least amount of open space, and really do a scenario planning, thinking about whether we could possibly have all the interventions in the public spaces to address net zero water reuse, both at the building level and also at the district level. So that's something that we talked about this morning.
Okay, and now all of you guys get to design your own solution. This is the design game card part of this